Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining our webinar on discussion with the SimBuild Scientific Committee panel. We'll just give folks a few minutes to join and then we'll get started. I see that an attendee has their hand up. Kenton, did you have a question? I think you should
no,
be.
All good. Apologies there.
Okay, no worries. Okay, why don't we start with introductions? And as folks trickle in, they can just join the conversation. So, hi everyone, I'm Supriya Goel, and we have several panelists here, along with Carrie Brown, who's the co-chair of SimBuild 2024. For today's session, we're going to be talking about the ins and outs of writing a scientific paper, the considerations that go into selecting a good paper for a Best Paper Award, some things to consider while reviewing a scientific paper. And to provide insights into all of these, we're joined by the Scientific Committee for SimBuild 2024. We hope at the end of this session, you guys have some good ideas on how to write better papers. And we just hope to make this session engaging, interactive. So just feel free to use the chat session or the Q&A box to put in any questions you have. We have a series of prepared questions that we'll go through, and we'll try and take your questions as they come in. So we'll just start with some introductions. I'll introduce myself and I'll pass it on to others on the panel. So I am Supriya. I'm a research engineer at PNNL. My research is focused on development of tools and methodologies for decarbonization of new and existing buildings. I'm also a member of the IBPSA-USA board. I'm a co-chair of SimBuild 2024, and I've been on several scientific committees and steering committees of multiple conferences over the years. I'll pass it on to Carrie.
Great, thanks, Supriya. As Supriya mentioned, I am the other co-chair of this year's conference. I'm a director at Resource Refocus, and I specialize in decarbonization and resiliency. I previously chaired the 2020 conference and chaired the scientific committee a few times. And I'm also the current president of IBPSA-USA and secretary of IBPSA World. I'll pass it to Dr. Nathaniel Jones.
All right, thank you, Carrie. My name is Nathaniel Jones. I'm the chair of the scientific committee for SimBuild 2024, and I am also a member of the IBPSA-USA board and the secretary of IBPSA-USA. Outside of this organization, I'm a senior consultant at Arup, where I work primarily in daylight and thermal comfort. And I am also an adjunct professor at Wentworth Institute of Technology and at Parsons School of Design. And I'm going to pass it on to Andy.
Hi, everyone. I'm Andy Berres. I'm a research engineer at National Renewable Energy Lab. My research is mostly around quantifying human behavior and its impact on energy demand, equitable access to energy, and urban scale modeling. I'm a member of the IBPSA-USA Board of Directors, Scientific Committee, and Research Committee, and I'm also the chair for the Publications Working Group, which operates under the Research Committee. I'm going to pass it on to Dr. Weimin Wang.
Okay, thank you everyone for joining our webinar. My name is Weimin Wang. I'm associate professor in the Department of Engineering Technology at the University of North Carolina at Charlotte. My primary research interest is modeling, analysis, and control of building systems. I have been serving on the scientific committee of SimBuild conference since 2014. So with that said, I'll pass on to Dr. Yunyang.
So hello everyone, my name is Yunyang, and I'm an assistant professor in Department of Civil Construction and Environmental Engineering at the University of Alabama. And my research interest is sustainable buildings at different scales to support the future building energy policy and design and operation. Until now, I have already published more than 40 peer review articles, and I deeply involved in the IBPSA-USA, IBPSA Global, and ASHRAE. Now let's pass to Zoltan.
Thank you. I'm Zoltan. I'm a faculty at the University of Texas in the Department of Civil Architectural and Environmental Engineering. My work is mostly on grid interactive, grid responsive buildings, occupant-centric building design and operation. And I'm involved in a few of these IBPSA committees, including the scientific committee this year. Back to you, Supriya.
Thank you. Well, that's our star-packed panel for today. So we'll start off with some questions, some things that we've often felt that authors or reviewers have, the kind of questions they have on how to write papers, what's considered a good technical paper. So, and we'll have our panelists weigh in on each thing as we go through. So Nathaniel, the first question is for you. How do you write a scientific paper? What writing style or tone of voice should you use? What are the key things to cover? So generically, what's considered a good scientific paper?
Well, that's a great question, Supriya. And it's really one of the critical things that we're thinking about when we look at what papers we want to have as part of the conference. But before I go into a lot of information, I just want to say that we had a great webinar that we produced 2 years ago in preparation for BPAX 2022 by Shady Atia, talking about some of the considerations and skills that go into writing scientific papers. And it is a great reference for anyone who's looking at writing a paper this year as well. The key point that I want to make about writing a good scientific paper is you should have two things in mind when you're writing it. One is the what. That is, what is the thing that you want to share with the community? And the other is the so what. Why is it important to share that? If you don't have a what in the paper, if you don't have some, finding or some piece of information that is important to share, then the paper isn't really a scientific paper. It's really just sort of your opinion that you want to get out there. But maybe, this isn't the best forum for it. And if you don't have a so what, well, it might be very scientific, but it's just not very interesting. So let's say, you've got the thing that you want to share and you've got a reason for sharing it. The next things that we really look for in a paper are that you have some significance that you're trying to express, you have some innovation, and you have relevance. Significance is asking, whether or not the piece of information that you're sharing in your paper is going to have some impact on the field. Is it going to change the way that we are designing buildings or running simulations of buildings? Is it going to open up some new field, or is it going to get people to think about what they're doing in a new way? Innovation is asking whether or not it's something that hasn't been done before. So, we know that there are plenty of, examples of, somebody's, done some new workflow and other people have copied it. But we're looking to see, have you created something new, or is it a rehash of what we've seen in previous papers? And relevance asks whether or not this is the right place to share it. So, in IBPSA, we have a long history working with the energy simulation community, working with daylighting, working with indoor environmental quality, with computational fluid dynamics, with urban scale and microclimate simulation. And those are a few examples of topics that we really want to see presented. And there may be new topics that can come in because they fit that mold and can become relevant. So even, if we don't have a lot of people who are engaged in them, they have the level of significance where they have the potential to become relevant. But we think about those three things in deciding whether or not we're looking at something that really is scientific and useful to our community. And then finally, we're looking at the clarity of the writing. So have you expressed these ideas in a way that's easy to get across? A common mistake that people make in writing a paper is that they write to an expert audience. They are trying to write to someone who knows more about the topic than they do. And chances are, if you are at the point of writing a paper that you want to share to conference, there is no one else who knows that topic better than you do at this point. So instead of writing to an expert, write to a community of your peers. Write to people who are, generally intelligent, but don't necessarily understand the topic as well as you do, and really make the effort to explain what you're doing in a way that they will understand. And that can include things like having appropriate grammar, spelling, punctuation. Those are all things that we care about in making a clear presentation, but also in providing some really cogent explanations of what you're doing and providing appropriate background and making sure that you are referring to previous work that other people could go back and look at to understand what you're doing in a better context. I think those are the key things in writing a good scientific paper and writing something that will really be relevant, to this conference, and something that others coming to the conference will really want to go and see when you finally come and present it. I don't know, maybe somebody else here wants to have some follow-up and share if there's anything that I've missed.
That's really insightful, Nathaniel. And you're right. Oftentimes we tend to focus on the what, but we don't really focus on the so what. And that's what helps it bring home to people who are reviewing the paper or even reading the paper. Let's see. Does anybody else from the scientific committee want to weigh in or add additional thoughts? Andy, you have your hand up. You go ahead.
Yeah, so just to expand on that a little bit. So we've told you, okay, you should emphasize these things like why does it matter what you've done, a novelty. You might not necessarily understand where you should be doing that. The answer is really everywhere. So you want to have some aspect of the so what, why are we doing this in your abstract. You want some of that in your introduction, maybe end your introduction on like, these are like the 3 main takeaways that your paper will give you, something like that. And then make sure to, emphasize it again at the end, because that's going to make it easier for your audience to really understand what you did and why.
Thanks,
Supriya,
Nathaniel.
I don't know
Yes,
how
go
to
ahead.
raise my hand. Sorry about that. Can I speak now without raising a hand?
Yeah, please go ahead, Weimin.
I'm sorry, I didn't know. I didn't find out how to raise a hand. It's a feature. Okay. So I think it's important to start early to write a good paper. You cannot just wait until the last week to work on this paper. You cannot have a very good paper if you do that. So it takes time, once your abstract has been accepted, you should work on the paper as early as possible. Once you have the draft, ask your co-authors, ask your colleagues to review that, get their comments. This will be helpful to improve the paper quality. So I think the key point is to prepare and plan early, as early as possible. Thank you.
Great, thanks everyone. That was really insightful. I think we'll move on to our next question. This one's for Zoltan. What would be some of the key characteristics of an impactful paper? So this is a follow-up to some of Nathaniel's points.
Yeah, I think Nathaniel answered a lot of these points. I think, and I want to make us reflect a little bit. So when we say impactful paper, that is something that you don't know in advance, right? It's really hard to understand. You just need to go at the recent chemistry Nobel Prize and see. Sometimes it takes a long time to appreciate your work. And so I don't think we should even think about it when you write the paper. What you want to write, when you write the paper, what you want to do is exactly what Nathaniel said. You want to focus on clarity. You want to make sure that the ideas are coming across the way you want them to come across, and they're easy to understand. Easy to understand doesn't mean it's a simple paper, but it takes work. As Weimin said, it takes a lot of work to write a complex thing in simple terms. And that's really your job when you're done with the work. And this is why you can't be done, this is why you can't start doing it, late in the process. it's very important to switch from researcher to storyteller when you're writing the paper, because you are writing a story. You're taking the reader on a journey. You're taking the reviewers. Your first hurdle is a reviewer. We'll talk about that later. And you want to make sure they're limited in time. You want to get your message as clear as possible across the board. I will add one extra item. So Nathaniel and Andy said the why and the what, but how also matters. So don't underestimate the methods part, where you put in what, how you actually did what you did, because most of these contributions are technical in nature, and the meat of the work is in there. And trying to clarify what has been done in a way that somebody else could repeat it, that's really when you have impact. If people can repeat your work and build upon it, that's how you can build upon progress in the scientific community. So those are the things that I would add. And make really good figures. That's the other one.
Thanks. I think that point of storytelling is so important, because a lot of us are taking very technical reports and trying to turn them into a paper, and it's a non-trivial lift to really get the storytelling. Any other thoughts on this question? I think between the two, we covered this pretty well. So Supriya, why don't I pass it to you for the next topic?
For sure. Okay. So our next question is directed to Andy. What would be some of the key categories that you would classify technical papers into, and what would be the content a scientific committee looks for in each category?
Thank you. So we are mostly looking at two different kinds of papers. On the one hand, we have research papers. That would be if what you did is something that's a new method. Say you're introducing a new method of doing daylighting or doing occupancy, something like that. That will fall under a research paper, as opposed to the other category we're looking at is a case study paper, in which case you're using a lot of the possibly even very new methodologies that have been developed in the past, but you're not really proposing a new methodology. You're taking what's there and applying it to a real world scenario, where say you're looking at a specific building and doing something. If you do a research paper, the first thing you should do, we're a pretty wide community with a lot of different backgrounds among the people, is summarize the relevant field that you're doing your work in to make it accessible to everyone who's in the community. So if you're doing daylighting, I don't know much about daylighting, I do occupancy. So explain it to me in a way where I know what you're doing and I understand all the relevant parts in order to be able to understand what you're doing and how you're doing it and why you're doing it. You also want to clearly state what the research gap is that you're addressing. So say the previous daylighting techniques did not cover that very specific thing that you're doing. Maybe there's whatever, a new fancy window that does cool things automatically. I don't know. So say previous windows couldn't do X. Well, your work makes it so you can now model that particular fancy new window that does cool things. You want to describe what makes your research novel. So fancy new windows that does cool things. Great. Let's go with that. That's a very novel thing to have, right? And then you want to provide enough detail to make your research reproducible. So if Nathaniel comes along and is like, hey, I do daylighting, I want to use your cool new technique, you should provide enough information. Oh, there's our emergency alert. There's you want to give Nathaniel enough information that he can go and reproduce the same results that you've done, so he can also use the fancy new window in his modeling. And then you want to also provide enough evidence to support any claims that you are making. So if you say, hey, we're able to model this new building, well, prove that you can. Now, if you have a case study paper, that's a completely different matter. So you don't really have that novelty aspect in terms of the methodology that you're presenting. But what you want to do is you want to provide enough background on the case study that you're presenting that people understand why you made the design choices you made. So what kind of building are you modeling, for example? Where is the building located? Are there any climate factors that affect any of the choices that you're making? So are you using a heat pump? Are you using something? I thought we were just supposed to get one of those. Are you using heat pump? Are you using a different HVAC system? Whatever. Why are you making these choices? So make sure that you really cover, like, explain why you're using method 1, product 1 over method 2, product 2, whatever. Clearly state the questions that you're trying to answer. So are you trying to minimize energy use? Are you trying to, I don't know, maximize insulation, whatever, maximize the amount of daylight people get? Describe what makes your case study unique. So, you know, you modeled a building, great. Someone else has also modeled a building, like what makes them different? Like, why should we care that you did this particular case study? And then finally, because it's a case study, what are the lessons that you learned in doing this? Did something surprise you? Maybe you tried different types of water heaters and you thought the smart water heater was going to be better and it wasn't. Well, that's a big surprise, right? So like anything that you learned that was surprising, or even just, okay, like those 2 options are roughly equivalent, but like in this building, this one worked better, in that building, that one worked better, and here's a theory as to why. Those are the kinds of insights that you could also add.
Excellent. Thank you, Andy. That's really helpful. And it helps to have those examples of different aspects of a research paper. Just seeing if any of the panelists want to add something to what Andy just explained. Okay, then I guess we'll move on to our next question. Carrie, over to you.
So Weimin, as our longest serving scientific committee member, this one's for you. What decisions go into selecting a paper for a best paper award?
Okay, thank you, Carrie. You know, selecting the best paper is always the most fun part and also most challenging part of the scientific committee's work. The reason is that we need to select the best from many well-written papers. So I want to talk about the selection process first. So typically when we select the best paper, we have 2 steps. For the first step, all accepted papers are ranked based on the evaluation of the invited reviewers. So based on the ranking, the scientific committee will select a short list of best paper candidates. So in the second step, then all members of the scientific committee will read all papers on the short list. So after carefully reading the papers, each member on the scientific committee will vote for 1 or 2 best papers. So the vote from the scientific committee will be the major factors will be considered to select the best paper from the short list. So the scientific committee will use the same evaluation criteria as what we will ask the reviewers to evaluate the papers. So these criteria include technical excellence, impact, and significance to the research community, clarity of writing, and relevance to the conference theme. So overall, we expect the best paper should have research findings that have strong potential to advance the state of the art. The best paper should make a regional contribution to the field. The best paper should be well written and clearly organized. Of course, the topic of the best paper should be highly relevant to the community of the building performance simulation as well. I think that's my short answer about this, your question.
I think just one thing to add. So, given the breadth of this field and the number of different areas that we work in, there's a good chance that I won't know a lot about the topic that's in whatever paper we select as the best paper. So one of the important things to me in picking that paper is that it's a paper that I can understand and that I can clearly see why that topic was worthy of investigation and why it was impactful.
Great, thanks. Any other thoughts on the best paper? Right, then I will hand it to you, Supriya, for the next one.
Excellent. Okay. So through Weimin's response, he alluded to the fact that the same factors that go into reviewing a paper go into selecting a best paper as well. So maybe, Yunyang, could you tell us what would you look for in a good review, and maybe use some examples so that folks on the call can also understand the process that the scientific committee expects reviewers to take?
Okay, then thank you, Supriya. So I think for a good review, the first thing I think a reviewer needs to provide an overall like the rating at the beginning. So in that case, we will know, okay, this paper is good or bad. And in addition, the reviewer needs to highlight both strengths and the weakness of the paper. So in that case, we will know what's the pros and cons for this paper. And in general, I think sometimes reviewer only mention that the problem in a specific paper without mentioning anything about the good thing for the paper. But for a good review, I think reviewer also need to include what's the good thing for a certain paper. This is second thing. And in addition, I think reviewer need to provide some evidence and example about their own judgment. Yeah, because sometimes I serve as like a guest editor for some journal article as well. So sometimes I thought some review comments mention that, okay, this paper has a certain problem, but the reviewer did not mention some example to show why the reviewer have such kind of judgment. So if the reviewer can provide some example, then it will be it will help a lot for us to judge if the reviewer's comment is a reasonable one or not. And in addition, I think when the reviewer evaluate the paper, they need to evaluate paper from different aspects. First, we need a reviewer need to evaluate paper to see if it's a relevant one. Second one, if it's a novelty one or is provide some innovation. And third one, I think reviewer also need to judge if the paper provide a suitable structure, format, language, etc. And finally, reviewer need to provide their own comment about if the paper provides sufficient content to support the conclusion. Especially for the case study, sometimes I review some paper related to a case study, and I realized some problem. One, like the big problem is that the case study only provide a conclusion which can be suited for a unique case, but they do not have like a big impact. So how could we use the result from that paper for some future cases? I think a reviewer can provide such kind of thoughts and provide a judgment to evaluate the paper. Yeah, thank you.
That's really helpful, Yunyang. So this is not just about a reviewer guiding the scientific committee, but a reviewer also guiding the authors on how to improve papers. And Zoltan, looks like you have your hand up. Anything you want to add in?
Yeah, I think that was my comment, or that I want to make sure we get across, because a lot of you know, or a lot of us who submit papers, we should also act as reviewers, and it's important to remember the peer part in the peer review, that we talk to colleagues, friends, and it's not you don't take a position of adversary where you say, oh, all these things that are, you know, not good, this is not good, you forgot this, but you take a position of a colleague that says, okay, here are the 5 things you should improve the paper, and here are the 2 things that are really good. And that helps everybody. Like, it's not like, oh, you know, this is a stupid paper or whatever, but okay, here are the 3 things you take, and that makes it better. It still might get rejected because it's not good enough. That's fair, but it doesn't need to have a tone that is, you know, tone deaf, basically.
Yeah, thanks, Zoltan. And for me, I think for the reviewer, it's kind of the supporting role. Try to improve the paper instead of try to reject the paper. So we think if the reviewer can provide some like a useful comment, and then the paper can be improved, that will be a good review. Yeah.
That's very helpful. Thank you. Okay, Carrie, I'll pass it over to you for the next question.
Great. This one's for Andy. So thanks for all those insights on sort of the collaborative review process and really helping folks make their papers better. Andy, when you get to the final paper review, do you have any advice you'd like to offer?
Yes, absolutely. So first of all, Zoltan, thanks for bringing up the whole being nice about your feedback. Like always remember that the people on the other end of your review are human beings, and you can be critical without being mean. But yeah, in terms of feedback, both for the program committee or scientific committee in this case, and for the authors, I generally recommend that you give SMART feedback. You may have heard of SMART goals. It's specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound. So what does that mean in terms of a review? So specific is what exactly should the authors address? So instead of saying, oh yeah, the background section is too vague or there's not enough analysis, call out specific topics you want them to cover. So say, oh yeah, I would like to have more information on whatever, like to go back to the daylighting, the role of daylighting in whatever your case study might be, for example. Or in the analysis, it could be, well, okay, so you see this result, but what does it mean? Maybe the authors didn't really expand on that, so that is something that you could ask for. In terms of measurable, any feedback you give should be something that in a second round of review, we will be able to say, was this fulfilled, yes or no? It should also be achievable. So if, someone did a study on one type of window saying like, well, but I really think you should have done a different kind of window, that's not really achievable. That's a different paper, right? So make sure it's achievable, relevant, try to keep your feedback to items that are relevant for the paper, for the conference. I mean, obviously you want the paper to be well written, but also we don't need to take a complete detour into a completely different topic unless it's really, really central to what the paper is about. And then finally, when you propose changes, keep in mind the time frame that is provided to make revisions. So for a conference paper, that might be different than for a journal paper. So for a journal paper, we're looking at like several weeks to several months between revisions, usually more along the lines of at least a month or two between revisions. You can do a lot in that time. For a conference, that timeline is usually way more accelerated. So the authors may only have, say, a week between the reviewed copy and the camera ready copy, as is the case for a workshop that I'm organizing soon. It was not our decision, it was imposed from above, but like, if there's only a week to make changes, they can't really make changes to any of the actual content. What they can do is fix layout issues, fix whatever, this caption didn't provide enough background, things like that. So keep in mind how much time the authors are going to have to actually implement your feedback when you give it.
Great, thanks so much.
I can say a few words. I think it goes back to the first part of the webinar when we discussed what makes a good paper in terms of clarity. The clearer it becomes what you say that you did and what you did not do, the easier job the reviewer will be able to make comments on it. And so the key aspect, I think maybe we haven't mentioned it clearly, but the main thing I look for a review in a paper that I'm reviewing, it says, this is what this paper did. The contribution is exactly this. It can be like a boilerplate sentence at the end of the introduction. But if that is not there, I have to start fishing for what this paper really did. And then it becomes tricky, right? And as a reviewer, like what Andy said, you don't want to write sentences that say, oh, introduction is not enough, methods is not enough. You want to say, okay, here are the 3 more references that you forgot, and those are key, and those should be put in. And in the methods, it's not clear how you get from step 2 to step 4, because it seems to involve some magic, and we don't do that here. And so that's the kind of stuff that, you know, we want to stress specifically in order to be able to have the dialogue between the reviewer and then the author.
So can I add something more, Carrie?
Yeah, please.
So I think, you know, we really appreciate, you know, all reviewers' contribution to the conference because we acknowledge this voluntary work take a lot of time. But we want to tell you that, you know, the reviewers' work is critical important for the quality of the conference. So we rely on the reviewers' comments as well, as I mentioned earlier, to select the best papers. So we expect, you know, reviewers' qualitative comments should match with the scores. So in some cases, we noticed that some reviewers made very good comments, but very, you know, not a match with the scores. So we really want to see, you know, the scores, the numerical scores, and the qualitative comments should match with each other. And also, you know, we have the, you know, information for the committee, for the scientific committee. So if you put some comments over there, we definitely will take care of that. Yeah. Thank you.
Great, thanks everyone. Supriya, I'll hand it to you for the next one. And when we answer that, maybe we can tie in some of the Q&As that came in too, because they're related.
Right, yeah, that's a good point. Okay, so the next question is for Nathaniel. And Nathaniel, when you answer this, maybe you could also address some of the questions that we saw in chat. The Scientific Committee for SimBuild 2024 has adopted a distinctly different process than all our previous conferences. As the Scientific Committee Chair, could you please describe what has changed and what motivated these changes?
Sure. Well, first of all, there are going to be a number of things that will be different about the conference in 2024 compared to what IBPSA has done previously. We're really working to make this a more engaging and more interactive conference. And what that means for our accepted papers is that when you come to the conference, there will be multiple opportunities to engage with other conference goers about the work that you've done. And some of that will be in sort of a traditional lecture style presentation of your work. Some of that will be in a more roundtable format. But we hope that it gives you more opportunities to share the work that you've done, to talk to other people about it, and to make that into two-way communication so that you are telling other people about your work and you're also getting back ideas that you can use in your future research. We're also working with a more accelerated timeline because you know, we've usually held this conference in the fall. This time it's going to be in the spring. And what that means is that we've shortened the entire process for writing papers. We've really tried to make it so that time doesn't come out of the amount of time that you've had in previous years to write your paper. But it does mean that the windows for reviewing papers and for us as a scientific committee to look at those reviews and get back to you with a decision are much shorter than they've been in the past. And we're hopeful that there is a positive result from that, that by shortening some of those windows, we're able to take research that you've done and show it off at the conference sooner and have it be more relevant because of that. But that also means that we've made a few changes in the way that we do some of the work in this conference. So one thing that we've done this year is that we have made the abstract submission optional. That means for those of you who did submit an abstract, you've already received reviewer feedback on those, and we'd really like you to take that reviewer feedback into account and let it help you produce a better paper. But we're also trying to source more papers. from a more diverse group of people. And that means that we are also allowing people to submit a paper if they did not submit an abstract. So it is an open call for papers this year. And those papers are due October 30th, which gives you about a month at this point to work on them. But we're really hopeful that by doing that, we can get a really good crop of papers this year. We're hopeful that by having events like this and making some of the other resources available that we've made online through some of our previous webinars, we can encourage a really good quality of papers and really good quality of reviews that will lead to a better set of papers and will allow us to be a little bit more selective this year than we've been in the past. And I want to mention one last thing, which is that in addition to giving out a Best Paper Award, which we've done every time that we've held this conference, we're going to continue doing something that we started with the last BPAX conference, which is to give out an award for the best reviewer. I know that a lot of times those reviews just seem like they don't really matter because they're anonymous and they don't get seen by very many people, but they are incredibly helpful for producing good papers. And so we want to reward the people who really do take that time and put in that effort to write really useful reviews.
Excellent.
Right.
Yeah, thank you, Nathaniel. And a few things to add, because both Carrie and I have served on previous scientific committees. All of these changes that are being implemented, these are as a result of some challenges we've experienced previously, where we received, and based on the feedback we've received from attendees. So just to let you know that all of your feedback does matter. We try and take that into account. We try and improve our processes based on that. So we just hope that at this SimBuild, you see an impact. You see a difference where the sessions are more engaging. The quality of technical presentations, technical papers are distinguishedly different. So that's our hope going forward. Anything else from the scientific committee to add to what Nathaniel just spoke about? Or Carrie, any thoughts from you?
The only thing I would add is that, if you are considering putting a paper together and this month you decide that it's just not quite ready for a paper, we're also having another track for non-paper presentations, which is going to come out in a few weeks. So if you want to have a way to present your work, but doing the review, think it's not a paper, there's going to be alternate paths. So we'll be releasing that in the coming weeks.
Excellent. Perfect. Okay. Then I guess over to our next question. Carrie, do you want to take that away?
Sure. This is for Zoltan. For all those researchers and professionals out there aspiring to be on a scientific committee, what would be your advice?
Oh, I think this is straightforward. So all of us are here because we want to be here, and I believe IBPSA-USA committees are with open invitations, standing open invitations. So if you want to get involved, go on the website, find the one you want to get involved, and contact the chair or / the committee and show up to the next meeting and bring your ideas. I think that's how we all got in here. And it would be great to see more people here. This is the way to shape this conference. If you're interested in bringing in other ideas of how SimBuild should be run, maybe not 2024, but in 2026, it's a good time to get in.
And I would add that, don't worry about being too junior. If you've got the enthusiasm and the dedication, you don't have to be a super senior person to participate. So feel free to raise your hand, even if you're early in your career.
You can be selfish. Like if you want this community to go in a certain direction, then you show up and you say, this is what we should do. And, convince the rest that that's what you should do. And then, hopefully that's the way it goes and you had your way.
I would also encourage folks who are interested to actually sign up as reviewers and spend some time to review papers. That's the one way you get familiar with the process. Your reviews get noticed by the scientific committee. The scientific committee knows you have something to add, something valuable to say, and your input would be useful and very insightful. So in either case, it's just giving back to your society. So serving as a reviewer is the first step to, in my opinion, to getting involved. And looks like we have a good question from Andy. So Andy, I'm not sure if I have the answer to this. How would one sign up to be a reviewer if you're not an author or a scientific committee member? Nathaniel, maybe you can help us with that.
All right, so it's pretty easy. If you want to be a reviewer for the conference, you need to make an account on ConfTool. ConfTool is the online service that we use to manage all of the reviews and paper submissions for the conference. And it's essentially one step, which is that if you have an account on ConfTool, it will ask you to indicate areas that you are interested in reviewing, and then we will try to match you with papers in those areas. It really does benefit the conference to have a lot of reviewers, and the more people we can source who are interested in providing those reviews, the better it is for the health of the conference overall.
Excellent. Thank you. So if any of the attendees have any questions, feel free to raise your hand or unmute and speak up. But at this point, I think that's all the questions we had for the scientific committee. So not seeing any questions from the attendees yet. Any last thoughts from any of the scientific committee members?
I will just say a big thank you to the scientific committee because it's a huge lift to make this happen. But I think it's a really important deliverable to have these high caliber papers. So having done it in the past, I very much appreciate what you're doing, and very appreciative to the reviewers who are donating their time to really help this be a team effort.
Absolutely. It's quite a big lift to make this successful and make this valuable. So we appreciate everything that all of you do as a part of the society. Okay. So I'm not seeing any additional questions. Feel free to reach out to us, any of the scientific committee members or the steering committee members, if you have any questions. But oh, we did see one pop in. Okay, so Nathaniel, this question's for you. Could you give some information about SimBuild?
Sure. SimBuild is a hackathon event that we started holding last year at BPAX 2022, and we are continuing at SimBuild 2024 next year. We are in the process of organizing the event. It will looks like it's going to happen before the conference this time, in the day or two before the conference. And registration for it should be available when conference registration opens, which means that you can make your plans to attend it as part of your plans to attend SimBuild. If you are interested in being involved in organizing the event, you're welcome to get in touch with us. We have an email, hackathon@IBPSA-US, which is the way to get in touch with all of us who are organizing the hackathon. I do want to stress for this hackathon, you do not need to be a programmer to get involved. We're hoping to find people from all sorts of disciplines who are involved in building performance simulation in some way, and get them to form teams while they're at the event so that they can choose a problem and work on a way of solving it that is informed by multiple disciplines. And that will mean that perhaps some people on the team will be coders, and some people will be practitioners or researchers or have some other sort of insight that they can give. Also, although we've done this last time as a 24-hour event, and I think it will continue to be a 24-hour event, it does not require that you stay up for 24 hours. That is something that some people were worried about. Were they going to have to try to commit to that much time? And most of our participants, granted, not all of them, but most of them do go back to their hotel rooms and get a good night's sleep in the middle of the event.
Thank you. That was helpful. Okay, not seeing any additional questions pop in. I think we'll wrap up this session. Huge thanks to all of our panelists and our co-moderator. And we hope to see you all at SimBuild. Thank you.
Thank you for organizing.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you for organizing.